Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak today on House Bill 7715. My name is Suzanne Koutou, and I want to tell you about my daughter. She was tiny, 5 feet, with glorious auburn hair and dazzling green eyes. She had a laugh that you couldn't resist and a personality that was larger than life. She was fierce about causes and loyal to friends. She was a champion for the underdog, whoever he or she might be. She loved making jewelry and watching movies with her friends. She loved crisp autumn days, Halloween and St. Patrick's Day. She loved her 11 cousins, her aunts and uncles, family traditions, and her many friends. She loved driving her white Scion TC with the sunroof open, but most of all, she loved me. She was beautiful and bright and was the light and love of my life. She was my daughter, my only child, Kristen Koutou. She was 29 years old when she was murdered, her life cut short. She was the victim of a ruthless, money-hungry drug dealer who had no compunction about the lethal drugs he was selling to his customers. Kristen was sold pure fentanyl rather than heroin when she went to this dealer, which is 50 times more lethal. As the dealer drove away with $20 or $40 in his pocket, Kristen used what she thought was heroin and died instantly, alone in a car, on a busy street, a parent's worst nightmare. Some who don't understand addiction might say that it was her fault for asking for the drug, but she didn't ask to die. She didn't ask for a lethal dose of fentanyl that would have killed someone much bigger than her. She didn't ask to be dead at 29. She had dreams and hopes like everyone else. She had a future. She wanted to be a wife and mother and work with children practicing occupational therapy. She wanted to be someone who made a difference. That dream was cut down in 1 second by a lethal dose of a drug that she wasn't aware she was taking. This scenario plays out every day in the neighborhoods of Rhode Island. Drug dealers are cutting their drugs with lethal substances such as fentanyl, carfentanil, synthetic drugs, and other toxic agents. In many cases, this leads to an overdose, and in worse cases, death. Since 2011, there have been 1,689 deaths due to overdose in Rhode Island. Most of those are from someone ingesting a drug that came from a drug dealer selling illicit lethal drugs. These are not victimless crimes. They are, in fact, wrought with victims. First is the loved one who dies. Then there are the family and friends left behind. I had to bury my sweet daughter. I no longer have the privilege of her smile, her hearty laugh, or her gently teasing me. I no longer get to see her massive, gorgeous red hair or get to hold her when she's sad. I no longer have anyone calling me mom or asking me to go shopping with her. I no longer have dreams of grandchildren. Instead, I have anger and sadness and grief, all because one selfish criminal had to sell a lethal dose of fentanyl to my beautiful daughter. I no longer have anyone who says, "I love you too, Mama," in response to my "I love you" at the end of each day. I am not alone. For every person that is killed in Rhode Island by a drug dealer, there are many more whose lives are ruined. There are many parents, grandparents, siblings, and friends who will never be the same again. We cannot allow this tragedy to continue. The dealers must be held accountable for every death they cause. They are murdering people daily with few repercussions in Rhode Island. That is why we have House Bill 7715, otherwise known as Kristen's Law, in front of you today. Kristen's Law would hold dealers responsible for every murder they perpetuate. No longer could someone drive away in freedom while someone else's child dies alone in a car. No longer will a faceless, nameless person be able to murder our children and not pay a price. This law calls for a life sentence for any murder resulting from the sale, delivery, or distribution of illegal drugs that leads to a fatal overdose. While this is hardly the only answer to the epidemic of overdose deaths in Rhode Island, it should send a strong message that if someone wants to prey on those who are ill, those who have a substance use disorder, they will pay the price with their own life. We in Rhode Island have to uphold the sanctity of human life, all human life. We cannot allow drug traffickers and dealers to kill our best and brightest people with impunity. They must pay a price for the death of another's child who would otherwise be here if not for the lethal drugs he or she was sold. I'm asking you today to pass Bill 7715, known as Kristen's Law, as amended. This act would include penalties for the death of all human beings as a result of a controlled substance transaction and punished by life imprisonment. I urge you to think of all of the innocent people who have been killed by a drug dealer while in the act of selling a lethal controlled substance, including my daughter, Kristen Koutou. Please help make a difference in Rhode Island.